Hello, everybody. Welcome to the GS1 US Small Business webinar, How to Get a Product Manufactured. We're really glad that you can join us today. I'm Caitlin Friedman. I'm the Marketing Director for Small Business Growth. And I will get started with introducing our speakers in just a minute. A couple things to take care of first. This is our GS1 US antitrust caution, just letting you know that GS1 US is committed to fully complying with antitrust laws. And this is our legal disclosure, letting you know that everything presented here is purely educational information, and you are free to make your own business decisions. And I'd like to just give you a little bit of background on GS1 US. We are a neutral not-for-profit organization that manages global supply chain standards. Our members include brands who are looking for a way to identify their products with a barcode. So anybody who wants to participate in the supply chain, whether you're a large multinational brand, a medium brand, or small businesses like yourself, we serve all those types of members. And we love to collect small business success stories. So if you give that QR code a scan, it'll take you to our YouTube page. You can check out some stories. We have a lot of fun making those videos. And I'd like to get started with introducing our guest experts. Andrea Cid is the CEO of Miami Growth Machine. Originally from Santiago, Chile, Andrea has lived in 11 cities. After a successful career in real estate and banking, Andrea moved to Miami to be closer to family. Together with her brother, she started her first business called Cid Botanicals. And in 2016, the family purchased Concept 2 Cosmetics, a bath and body manufacturer. In 2020, Andrea launched Miami Growth Machine, a manufacturing incubator for CPG startups. Working with entrepreneurs, Andrea is passionate about building an inclusive ecosystem in Miami where founders of all backgrounds can thrive. Love that. Andrea has a degree in economics from Harvard College and an MBA from the Wharton School. She's a founding member of the South Florida Harvard Alumni Entrepreneurs. Welcome, Andrea. So glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And our next guest expert, we're really thrilled to have Victoria Ho with us. She's a CEO of Sherpa CPG. Victoria is a fearless storyteller who founded Sherpa CPG to help emerging food and beverage brands scale meaningful ideas into memorable retail-ready products. A former brand owner and factory operator, Victoria now brings her brand partners over a decade's worth of hands-on experience as a consumer brand strategist, a product formulator, a co-packer liaison, and a commercialization expert. Since Sherpa's 2020 launch, the company has helped guide over 100 new products to the shelf. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Victoria champions all makers who are driven to make food more inclusive and accessible and sustainable for all. She proudly serves on the Specialty Food Association's Board of Directors and in the volunteer corps of Included CPG, which is a collective of BIPOC founders committed to amplifying cultural voices in CPG. Welcome, Victoria.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Great to be with Andrea on this call as well.
Great. Before we get started, I did want to mention I'm here with my colleague Kate Platt, who's going to be monitoring the chat and the question function. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to submit those in writing. We'll do our best to get to them when we have a break in the discussion. If we don't get to them, we're going to put up some contact information for our speakers at the end of this, and you can feel free to contact them on your own. And before we get started, we thought we'd put up a poll just to kind of get a sense for your growth journey. We really want to see how many years you've been in business, just to give us a sense for where everybody's at. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll here. Go ahead and let us know. Everybody see it? Yep, okay, it's collecting responses. We'll see what comes up there. Okay, it looks like a lot of you have been in business more than 5 years. Some a little bit less and some less than 1 year. Okay, great. Thanks so much, everybody. Okay, so I think that we'll start with the first question. This is for both of you, Andrea and Victoria. What are your customers' main pain points when it comes to manufacturing? And Andrea, why don't you start?
Sure. Thank you so much for organizing all of this. Always really happy to do any type of outreach for small businesses in particular, which is what Miami Growth Machine focuses on. Having had just dealing with what we've all dealt with over the pandemic, it's still supply chain issues. That is the biggest issue. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. if you're a small business and you're looking to launch new products, that comes into a different framework with the idea that you really want to be very careful with your cash flow. So you're trying to minimize large minimum order quantities. And that then, what does that mean? How do you deal with your supply chain, your packaging, your raw materials, your components in a way that allows you to maximize your cash, but still get product out there in a world that's really looking to manufacture in large amounts? So anybody that's definitely, if you guys have been around for more than 5 years, you've launched products and you know that that's the biggest challenge. And that's something that we're constantly solving for our clients, how to get something out there in as small quantities as possible, but still getting the quality and the look and feel that you're striving to with your branding, which I know is what Victoria definitely is more of an expert on.
Excellent. Thanks. Yeah, Victoria, let us know what you're hearing out there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely double click on what Andrea just shared on supply chain. I think I would follow that up with funding. Whether you are, in startup mode, 1 to 5 years emerging, or love seeing that we have so many kind of growing, emerging brands that are more than 5 years old on this call. I think that being able to balance your pacing, right, the production planning, those moments when you need large chunks of capital just to make a product, and continue achieving kind of that consistently exceptional result that your customers expect from you. That funding is a challenge right now, I think, for all CPG, especially in my pocket of CPG, food and beverage. And the question was really on pain points, not so much solutions, but I think, following part of that pain point of funding is whether to focus on kind of building the team around you in order to grow your company, or putting a lot of those resources into the growth of the actual brand. So visibility, product, things like trade shows and marketing. And that certainly is a challenge that, as you grow along the spectrum, there will be varying degrees of how you are confronted with that challenge. But no matter where you are in your current growth stage, I would say, there is commiseration amongst all of us in CPG that being able to find resources and funding, it is difficult. So, to Andrea's point, I think you have to really hold tight to your bearings and be very, very clear on what your immediate goals are that serve your long term. Try not to get distracted. I think that's the final challenge I'll end my answer on is there's lots of distractions. Focus.
That's a really, really good point. Yeah, there's so much to cover. Thank you. I have a question because this is, a GS1 US event. Of course, we're interested in where UPCs come into play in the whole process. So, Andrea, if you could let us know, what are your thoughts? Why do you think UPCs are important from your perspective in the manufacturing process?
I am really glad that you're putting this together because, and I guess obviously if you've got slightly more longer term people on this call that have been around, but the number one thing that I would say it's important is because so many of my clients don't know about them. And that is the shocking part, because obviously they're a huge part of our everyday life. Nothing that we're putting into a shopping bag is not having a UPC code on it, but we just don't necessarily know that as someone that's maybe launching a new product. If you haven't had to manufacture before, if you're new to this product development process. And that's the thing, maybe when you're first launching something and you're just going to do DTC, maybe if you're just going to do a few things here and there, or just even if you're going to just sell to friends and family, maybe you don't need it, but you need to know and make that decision and say, okay, I'm not going to do it, but then you're going to need it very quickly. If you're going to sell on any marketplace like Amazon or anything like that, you're going to need a UPC code to denote what product it is, the size, the SKU. Understanding that and just having that as a part of your process so that you're not printing packaging and doing things and then having to reprint. To Victoria's point, like, it's so hard to fundraise. Cash is so precious. Making a mistake like that is real cash and time. I have had people do secondary, like, not understand the value of getting a real GS1 code going on and being sold something on the secondary market, and then having to print labels to sticker over UPC codes on beautiful packaging. That was just heartbreaking to have to do. Otherwise, we would have had to trash it. And so there's just these things. If you just know them ahead of time, it'll save you time and money. And I'm just really happy that we're getting to talk about that.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you for your insights there. I mean, you talked about packaging, and it's a question that I wanted to ask Victoria too. You know, aside from figuring out where your barcode goes and making sure you have those basics, you know, what are some key aspects that business owners should really focus on as they start to think about what their packaging looks like, or if they're redesigning their packaging? Just kind of keeping the costs and, you know, wanting to do it right the first time. What's your advice there, Victoria?
Yeah, so I have 4 points that I always share about packaging that I kind of call just the cornerstones of effective packaging. And you will very rarely, if ever, hear me say good packaging or bad packaging because, we can't often read the aesthetic desires or appeals of our consumers, but we can make sure that our package is effectively speaking to them, engaging them, capturing them, or it's not. And so those 4 cornerstones, I'll start with the one that GS1 is most closely related to, and that is part of compliance. Although, a GS1 barcode is not regulated by FDA, to Andrea's point, like, you don't find a single thing that scans across any sort of checkout that doesn't have a barcode on it. And I think that, making sure that your barcode is of the right size for scannability, that it meets the colorways of scan, so that it can be read by a gun, by a scan gun. Compliance also has to do with really all the fiddly bits that the FDA requires that you have on your packaging. And some of these things are not intuitive. So they encompass things like the layout, where you put your net weight statement, where you put your nutrition facts panel, as well as the verbiage in which you kind of make claims or speak about your product. And that leads to the second element, which is, probably encompasses my obsession, which is communication. And it's very interesting. I think if you think across the jobs that your packaging has, communication has a lot to do with storytelling. But the number one job that your packaging has is actually to tell people what's inside the package. And I know so often as entrepreneurs or CEOs, or marketing executives, we are so close to the thing we make. It is, we live it, we breathe it, we wake up every day thinking about it. We think it's very obvious to consumers what the heck it is. But I can't tell you how many times I've looked at, again, gorgeous pieces of packaging, and I have no idea if it's a cookie or a fish stick. It's just very fanciful ways of talking about flavor and texture, and there is no statement of identity about what's inside. So no matter what growth stage you're in, I think communication-wise, that's one place to start. Communication also entails really everything you share with your consumer about what they need to know to compel them to have a conversation with you later, right? So communication is opening up a conversation that then converts a curious bystander into a consumer. And then you can continue that storytelling later across your packaging when you get home or via your social media, your website, etc. Communication is very closely tied to the third pillar, which I call kind of your creative bucket, right? That's your color palette, that's your typography, which is just a fancy word for your font, right? That is photography or pixel perfect renderings, whatever it is that captures your brand persona. For some brands, that might be, crisp, beautiful photography. For other brands, that might be abstract swashes or, cartoony little images of strawberries or blueberries with faces on them. Whatever it is that speaks to your customer demographic and really captures your vibe, so to speak, that goes part that goes into the area of creative. And lastly, it is packaging. So, right, we think about construction as the final piece. And construction is, I think often forgotten because it feels like a boring part of when you're designing your packaging, but it has so much to do with how you engage your consumer and really solving problems for them sometimes in terms of being the most convenient or usable or practical way that a consumer is going to experience your product. Construction has to do with the format, right? What serving size is it? Is it a pouch or a box, a bottle or a can? It also directly relates to your brand and your product philosophy, right? If you are a product that champions sustainability, are you using sustainable materials? What's the finish of your package, right? Does it have kind of like yummy textured paper? Is it high gloss if you feel that that conveys premium? All of these things really all work together. So just a quick rundown again, your compliance, communication, creative elements, and your construction, I think all come together to develop packaging that is effective and works for you, like a salesperson directly from your shelf when you cannot be, hiding in the aisles waiting to talk to every single person that walks by your packaging.
Right. Yeah, you got to put your best foot forward. Let the packaging speak for you. So the four C's. Thank you. Andrea, anything to add to that?
I would just add, because this is the part that I nerd out on, is the manufacturing, and I can't tell you how many times, and we've made this mistake where we've designed beautiful packaging and it is like a nightmare to produce on the lines because we've made it with like lovely little hooks that it's like an origami that like needs to be done and takes somebody way too long to actually fold into its correct shape. Anything that you can make easy. And sometimes this is something that people know, unless you're a packaging designer and you actually do. I think so much of you can do anything in a render. Anything can be done and created on a digital screen, and then we actually, when we do the prototypes, we send it to the back, and the women on the lines, we have them do it, and then I ask them for their feedback on it, and we actually don't purchase anything until they tell me like how is this going to be to actually manufacture when we're doing 30,000, 5,000 pieces or more, or that it needs to be a real consideration. Is it flat packed so you're not paying a ton of money for shipping? That's also really important to note. So anything like that, remember the people that are actually making it for you.
Yeah, that must be hard to be realistic, but then also creative. You want to stand out, but you need to keep costs down too. It must be a hard choice sometimes. Yeah. All right. A question for both of you. What are some best practices and tools that our attendees can use when they do have limited resources, when you really have to make sure that you're getting the best value out of every decision that you make? What are some pointers or tools? It could be, something actionable or just a piece of advice that you keep in mind.
Do you want me to jump in here?
Oh, sure.
Really
Yeah, go
quickly?
ahead.
I would say if you have limited resources, one thing that you can really, really lean on is your consumer base or your customer base, right? Let's not call them consumers when they are our people, our tribe. So by that, I really mean, especially in 2023 and beyond, the relationship that a brand and the people behind a brand, so the founders, the team, um, the relationship that you as a brand develop with your customers can be incredibly genuine and authentic, and you can bring them into part of your journey from day one up through day 10,000. Your customers are an incredible resource for being a focus group, email lists or through your social media. They can provide you feedback on things like your packaging, which we were just talking about, even up through elements of how you decide to scale, right? Is the next thing they want from you a single serve, or is it maybe a club pack, right? So where do you spend your resources as far as your innovation pipeline, which also extends into, right, like flavor choices, or for Andrea, right, like scents, right? Like what is the next SKU that you're going to develop that you can almost have an embedded customer base that's ready to buy it or has pre-bought it because you brought them into the journey of your decision making. Now, of course, like, you want to listen for patterns, which is what I usually recommend to my clients. Like, listen for patterns, not necessarily specific people's voices, right? To gather kind of a net understanding of what your customers want. But I think through everything from product development to user-generated content to help you with marketing, absolutely, I think lean on your customer base. And in a close alignment with that, I think, really just there's a lot of community right now. We mentioned during my bio that I am a member of Included, which is a founder and executive collective for BIPOC and minority-owned brands in CPG, food and beverage. But right, like nobody understands your struggles as much as people that have been through the journey. And I have found that oftentimes people really love to help. They're quite generous with their knowledge equity. And if you are not sure of something, if you need a sounding board, and don't quite so much want an opinion or a consultant's advice, I think certainly ask someone who has been through those steps in your journey before, and share a pool of resources from co-packers to amazing suppliers, trade shows that you should attend, etc. And I think that can save you a lot of time, which always ends up being money.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Andrea, why don't you weigh
Yeah,
in on that?
that's so critical. We always ask your customers. That's actually how, like in my other business, that's how we launch. Usually we launch products. We go to our distributors, and why it's so critical to be able to do small batches for us. And that's how we've developed. Like, we focus on bath and beauty with Concept 2, and we obviously focus on skincare, hair care, fragrance for our clients. But there's no substitute for really having that discussion directly with a client and then seeing, okay, is this actually going to work for you? Because that's who, at the end of the day, including them in that product development process. The other thing I'll say is, having kind of related to what Victoria was talking about, from my perspective, I focus on the operation part, but I really need a client to have rock solid understanding of their marketing and strategy and their positioning, because that's going to make it so much easier for us to find packaging that works, that is in line with their brand, create formulas that are in line with their brand. There are so many choices to make along the product development journey, and you will go crazy with what cap to pick, or should it be a tube or a bottle or this or that, what side, like all of those things. It is overwhelming the amount of choices that you have if you don't have a clear idea of what your positioning is. I think a lot of clients, sometimes they focus on the product. And of course, that's what we're here to deliver for you. But I can only do that really well when I have like a solid brand that we are now supporting with that product. And looking at it that way helps make the decision making process so much easier and faster. And that will definitely save money and time, because you won't have to go doing back and forth or have to redo packaging or have to maybe make changes that you probably could have figured out earlier on.
Right, right. It's so important to keep that focus, right, and stick to it. I'm sure that's a challenge sometimes. Kate, am I seeing a question? Should we address this?
Sure, we can answer this question. Let me read it out loud so everyone can
Great.
hear it. Since I create my own packaging right now, I use the same branded cardstock to place with my product in a clear plastic sleeve that are the same size to save money, and then I add the appropriate UPC code. Listening to Victoria, I realized I don't actually have the name of each product anywhere. Should I add the product name to the top of the barcode or just add an extra sticker to the front that has a product name?
Great question.
That is a fantastic. We've had an epiphany. I feel like this has already been a wonderful session. So, I mean, my pick would really be, again, an immediate answer would be, yes, please add a sticker to the front. I think also if you want to add, a name above the barcode just so that there is visibility there, that's great. But keep in mind, right, like always step into the shoes of your consumer and where they are most likely to first meet your product, and the 3 seconds of their attention span that they are going to give to you to try to figure out why they really need it. And I'm sure it's amazing and they do need it, but if they cannot find that information right away, specifically if you're forcing, them to kind of turn it around or search for it, you may lose, precious seconds in that initial introductory moment that you could spend telling them many other things about your products that are compelling. So I think absolutely make it just crystal clear what it is that they're about to purchase, and then, continue the story from there.
Yeah, Andrea, that reminds me of I think when we were talking earlier that you had some stories along those lines, right? Where people
It's really common. I think like what Victoria said, it just seems like, oh, of course I have. It's really common. And we've definitely had situations like that where, I mean, I've done this, like where we didn't really put our brand name prominently on a gift set. Or we had like a logo, but it wasn't very clear how it was differentiated. It was too small, and you've got real estate. If you're on a shelf, you've got precious real estate that you have to not just advertise, but announce what you are, who you are, and what is in there. And that sometimes, yeah, gets missed because you're so close to it. But I would just say anybody that's dealt with that, you're not alone. Like everyone has made these mistakes. It's just hopefully kind of part of this whole discussion. You got product out there, great. That's the thing. I really always kind of worry about people doing the opposite situation where they're kind of analysis paralysis, like, oh, is this perfect? Is this absolutely perfect? I can't launch. I don't want to make a single mistake. And the truth is, like, maybe just embrace the fact that sometimes that stuff is going to happen and you're going to improve it as you go along, and done is better than perfect. So like, you just get it out there, you see where you can improve it as you actually get it into people's hands as well. So there's a bit of a balance.
Yeah,
they're really triggered in my brain, which is fantastic. Which is just, don't get too precious about anything really about your product, because if you are in CPG, your goal, I'm assuming, is to build a brand that is bigger than you, right? So to kind of hold on to these secret things like I can't show anyone my packaging until it's completed, kind of at times is a lost opportunity for you to pivot into something that works better. And also just, on statements of identity, I'd say like we're kind of talking today somewhat more broadly because we have so many amazing entrepreneurs on the phone. But when I work one-on-one with brands, it does become very category specific, and there is strategy around, whether your product is more innovative or introducing, let's say, new ingredients or functionality or benefits to your consumer, then, you do kind of toggle the balance of what you're saying and how much you're explaining things on your package, right? If you're in a bottle and in a fridge, chances are you're probably a beverage. But, if you're in a pouch on a shelf and there's no windows in your pouch, and you're selling, I don't know, chocolate covered crickets sprinkled with probiotics, like maybe there needs to be a little bit more explanation about what's in there. So take heart in that too, is that your category, product wise, and your buyer need different information from you and need that hierarchy of information on your packaging to be clear. And it can be quite category specific. So, keep that in mind as you lay out your communication as well.
Yeah, it's worth noting, GS1 US, we are obviously the barcode people, right? We know the UPC barcode, the linear UPC barcode, but we're starting to see QR codes attached to packaging, right? Because people want to tell those marketing stories and they want to expand the relationship with the consumer. And in about the next few years, up to 2027, we're leading the industry to migrate to just the QR code, just a two-dimensional barcode on pack, so that we can reduce that real estate and allow brands to tell that story with dynamic information that's accessible by a smartphone scan. So I'm just when you were talking about that, I thought I'd note that because I think that is such a huge opportunity for small brands, big brands, anybody who's selling a product to kind of rethink their packaging and start thinking about that now and understand what kind of opportunities do you have to kind of push out videos to a consumer, or recipes, or instructional videos. Andrea, in the beauty industry is probably going to be pretty huge. So just wanted to note that. And do you have any kind of thoughts about how that might kind of change the game in terms of like the trust relationship with a brand, that a consumer might have that opportunity to kind of understand more about the brand?
Wait, I just want to understand this better. So this is going
Yeah,
to be a two-in-one?
correct. Yeah. So at the point of sale, it'll scan, and then also with your smartphone. So it's not a whole lot different than what you're doing right now, scanning those QR codes on pack, but it'll just
So
be
it'll
kind of hanging
know,
up a little bit more
like, am I
factual.
scanning for a scan gun versus a phone, a smartphone?
Yeah,
That's so
yeah.
cool. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Then people will be even more. I really think the pandemic kind of brought back the QR code, because
It did.
for a while, like 10 years ago, I'm like, I don't know how old people are on this call, but I'm old enough to remember when QR codes were innovative, and then they disappeared and nobody wanted them anymore. And then the pandemic came and everybody was like, oh, menus on, now it's kind of come back and is a really, really good way, tied to, I think, social media or anything else that you can do, videos, recipes, Instagram. I like, there's so many ways that I personally use that even. So I think it's just a much easier, frictionless storytelling approach if we can save the real estate even more, right? Because the whole point is that what Victoria was talking about, that vibe that comes from your packaging, um, it may or may not like add to that. So if you can reduce it, I think that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure that'll get adopted really quickly.
Oh yeah, I think to your point too, it just I think you mentioned this, Caitlin, but it's like people connect with people. And so, if a QR code instantly opens and there's, a warm face, or you as the founder or your team giving a message, perhaps like it's an, influencer that your consumers connect with and trust. Trust is the most invaluable currency that a brand can earn with its consumers. So I think if you can create more of that immersive environment in like the harsh fluorescent lighting of a store aisle, or even in the comfort of your home, that is beautiful. I mean, my brain starts to spin immediately with, how you can bring retailers into that as well, and, create
Yeah.
whole shopping lists with different products around the store. Like, I think that's a beautiful way of giving brands the gift of storytelling in a very limited piece of real estate, and to bring in other senses like sight and sound and movement, passage of time in video and in information. So, um, yeah, you guys are, your technology astounds me. So I'm really excited to.
Yeah, it's we're pretty excited about it. It's it's going to take a period of time to get retailers' infrastructure upgraded, and we'll see who adopts it, who's the first movers. But it's a huge opportunity. We're really excited to see what happens. I understand we have another question.
We do. So, what is the cost for a new startup to get set up with GS1?
Okay, so in the last couple of years, we changed our pricing structure so that it's a little bit more accessible for small businesses to get a single barcode. So there's a single GS1 US GTIN. GTIN is another word for UPC, that starts at $30. So we found that that's a pretty easy way for people to get their GS1 sourced barcodes, and you can download that using our tool called GS1 US Data Hub. We also have some more bundled packages like the GS1 US Company Prefix, which I'm sure a lot of Victoria's and Andrea's clients are using, especially if they have multiple different types of flavors and scents and colors. And whenever you have a lot of product variations, you're probably going to opt for those company prefix options. And so we'll put some links in the chat after this is done, and you can have some access to the full scope on our pricing. So thanks for the question. All right. One question, you guys have given us such great advice, and as we kind of start to wrap up, I was wondering, what's the best piece of advice that you think about every day, or that, if you could put on a t-shirt or a bumper sticker, it's just stuck in your mind. What would you kind of pass along to people who are just starting out? Who wants to tackle that one first?
I mean, maybe that's the start, is that there is so much good advice out there, and it hits different
Hmm.
as you go through different stages of your growth. So maybe in that light, I would say for me, it is find your purpose, whether that's as a brand or as a human. Amazing if they intertwine or interweave in the middle. But as we are business owners here, I would say really define your purpose as a brand. Your product might serve that, the people around you hopefully adopt your vision. But if you have a purpose, I find that even when you are forced to pivot or rethink, you are never straying too far from your intentions for how you actually want to impact your consumers or the planet. And so when you have that anchor, that North Star in place, and really, really, I mean, when I say define it, I mean write it down, like force yourself to put it into words. Be very, very clear on what that purpose is, and then also very, very flexible about how you're going to get there. And, exhibit kindness to yourself when you are knocked off the path that you think you need to be on to get there. As long as you keep that purpose, that North Star in mind, I think you can go to bed and wake up, knowing that your time is being spent effectively, and that you are serving that purpose. And this is a, also PSA, when I say go to bed and wake up, I mean, please do sleep as an entrepreneur. That is self-care. So cannot be undervalued as just solid advice, solid mom advice. I think, be kind to yourself in all ways.
It's great advice.
That is really the best advice. I mean, because this is such a difficult path. It is incredibly worthwhile and it is not easy. And I would say anyone that is, I think also this was my experience when I was dealing with Sid Botanicals, like Victoria, like going to like Expo West and hearing about like someone that made a cookie, their grandmother's recipe in their kitchen, and then like literally overnight or something they were in Whole Foods and everywhere and it was fantastic, and that is just not true. That is not how that happens. It is a grueling process of dealing with buyers and dealing with mishaps and typos in your packaging that came in and all of these things that will, if you don't have that kind of sense of what am I doing this for, that allows you to go through all of these ups and downs, which is gonna, I mean, just yesterday we had a massive storm here, we lost power. It's like all of this stuff is happening. And yeah, we're here, we're doing it together, we're figuring it out, we're solving problems for our clients. It is so much fun and exciting to be able to do that. I go back to what I said before about done is better than perfect. I am notoriously recovering like perfectionist, and being an entrepreneur cured me of that because it's impossible. You will not sleep, you will just be a miserable human if you don't figure that out. And at the same time, it is wonderfully rewarding to be able to see a client launch something that you helped them create, or seeing those first units go out on the line and getting them put in and seeing how you're sending them to their first client, getting that feedback of how excited they are to receive it, and the jobs that you're creating, the people that you're working with, the for me, it's really just solving those problems for clients. And so that to me is wonderful. And so it allows you to go through all of the ups and downs of the ridiculousness that will happen as you try to do something different.
Excellent. Yeah, that's really, really good advice. I think those are all the questions I had. Let's see if the audience has any more questions for you. I think we covered so much. I think people are going to be ready to kind of take their businesses to the next level. And you have added so much more than what we could just tell you about barcodes, right? Barcodes are such a small part of the overall brand experience. And we really thank you for bringing that part of getting a product manufactured out to our membership. If there aren't any more questions, Kate, I think that we're ready to wrap up. Any final thoughts that you wanted to share, Andrea and Victoria?
Maybe just one as we leave is, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. And I've done that here today in this room. And I think just as a goal of personal growth, to remember that I cannot do all the things, and that developing relationships in this industry where you are a founder and so much of your work happens kind of mentally and independently. Your team does not necessarily have to mean your employees or your staff. Could very well be like the team you choose to have around you that supports you. The way I have these lovely 3 women here now for, the rest of my journey as a human. I really encourage you all to remember that without good people, no products get made. And so, really weigh the value of relationships carefully and be generous with your time as you nurture those relationships.
Any final thoughts, Andrea?
Yes, and lean on the experts that, the stuff that you don't know.
Yeah.
I know I do that. Like I have my wheelhouse, which is operations, production, formulation, all of that stuff. But I definitely will lean on experts for the stuff that I is not my expertise. And I do think that that's like being obviously careful with that. But it, if you're finding good people that you want to work with and that you realize will support you and what you're trying to achieve, then and have are trying to put something good out, then I think that that's you can't do it by yourself. So it's good to understand that and see where you can get help when you need it.
It's great. The power of community. It's a wonderful thing. Thank you so much for joining us. I see a couple of people asking how they can get in touch with you. So here are the ladies' websites, and you can connect with them on LinkedIn. We also have a resources page for small business owners, and you can reach out to GS1 US. This is our small business email inbox. We're happy to kind of help direct any questions, or do our best to help you get the right expert and the right information in place. So thank you all for joining us. This has been so informative and just a great event. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you for organizing everything.
Yeah. Have an excellent day.
Thanks,
Take care,
all.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey,
All
that was
right.
great.
That was
Great.
awesome.